At some point, your exceptionality should be brought up and should be dignified. That you were the first in all these things. You were the first people. You were the first Jews. You're the first human beings on earth. The native people, they're not the first people. The first people in America were black folk. The first Jews in the world were black people. At some point, your exceptionality should be brought up and should be dignified. That you were the first in all these things. You were the first people. You were the first Jews. You're the first human beings on earth.
Welcome to another edition of the Victim No More podcast. Thank you to each and every one of you who has taken the time out to once again listen to this brother. It is Saturday, February the 11th. I don't know where you are in your part of the world or part of the country, but where I am, it is a balmy 71 degrees in the middle of February. So how about that? But that's what you get here in the wonderful state of North Carolina. So we subject to have a snowstorm, probably about 10, 15 days from now, because that's just how we roll around here. But nevertheless, I'm going to enjoy the weather. But I wanted to do this podcast because I got some things on my mind and getting in the habit of doing these broadcasts or podcasts, however you want to call it. I needed to get off of me. I needed to go ahead and get it done so I can move on to the next thing and finish enjoying my day. And you can listen to this any time that you want to. First of all, I want to make you aware that the Victim No More podcast is sponsored by thevictimnomore.com. Let's keep in touch as far as social media is concerned. Got a Facebook group or page for the Victim No More, so just look for the Victim No More. Also on Twitter, you can look for it by that handle, the Victim No More, and also on Instagram as well. Just to give you a heads up, as time moves along, there's another social media platform that I will be growing and expanding to, and ultimately, at least this is the goal, to move the group or the majority of the group that I have on Facebook over to blackspot.com. That is a black-owned social media site that is growing. It's going through the stages of expanding to be able to handle the type of capabilities that we're able to do on Facebook right now. But I'm also on Blackspot, so you can look for me. You can look for me by name, Bobby Patterson, and I'm using that social media platform as well, and just watching it grow. And actually, I have plans to eventually just migrate completely over there and leave Facebook alone. That's the goal. So I just want to go ahead and make you aware of those particular changes. And more or less piggyback on the end of the last podcast, or the first one, because I was telling the story of how the Victim No More got started, what prompted, this platform, what prompted the birth of the Victim No More as far as a website, as far as a page on Facebook. And, I won't go through the whole story. You can go back and listen to that podcast. But I had ended with me talking to one of the workers within that beauty supply store that, of course, we do not own, but the beauty supply store has opened up another part of the game, if you will, by employing us and opening up a salon in the back of a beauty supply store, as to which we are the main customer. We are the main clients. And I was talking to the young lady and just asking her some general questions. And I asked her, I said, well, do you see it beneficial as to where you and a few of the workers here, you all just got together and just opened up your own salon? And, she honestly looked at me as if I was speaking a different language, because she thought that she had it real good there. Now, here's the irony in all this, as far as the shopping center as to which all this action is going on, where we have all these businesses and we are the consumer. Right in front of the shopping center, check this out, is the Urban League. I lie to you not. There's an actual Urban League office right in front of this shopping center that is full of businesses that are not owned by us, but yet we are the number one consumer. Let that sink in. So as you can see, I'm working and dealing with different levels of either no awareness or maybe a little bit of awareness, but don't really want to take on the responsibility of being aware and understanding that a change has to take place. And the first change that has to take place is within us. But this behavior did not happen overnight. We just didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, I think I'm going to act against my people's own economic interests. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to give my money to everybody else, but not build anything for myself or support others that have built something within our community, but we're not going to support it. And as a matter of fact, we are going to be highly critical and more critical of those businesses than those that actually act against our own economic interests. We didn't wake up that way. It didn't happen overnight. This is what you may call racism, white supremacy on a level that is not so blatantly seen, especially if you're not aware, but it is definitely felt through generations. Here as of late, one of my favorite books, matter of fact, my favorite book to read right now, as far as information and trying to get an understanding of how we got here as a people economically, is Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson. I advocate that if anyone in my listening audience is homeschooling, I advocate, please, go get Black Labor, White Wealth, and then I call it the companion book that goes along with it, Powernomics. And I strongly advise that for any homeschool curriculum, because we know that this is never going to be introduced as far as public schools are concerned. If you're homeschooling, or even if you're not homeschooling, I encourage that if you have young children at home and they're able to read and comprehend, that you get these books. First of all, read them yourself. As a parent, you be responsible and read these books yourself. And especially with Black Labor, White Wealth, what Dr. Anderson does so well is to break down how these policies got in place to put us in the position of where we are right now in this country. How did it happen? How was the Constitution manipulated? How was the Supreme Court active and played a role in completely denying and ignoring the provisions that were specifically placed in the U.S. Constitution for us? And you will get an understanding of what you see today, and that if we do not correct our behavior, what we're going to continue to see. So please get these books. And a little note about Black Labor, White Wealth. I guess maybe about a month and a half ago, Dr. Boyce Watkins, who I really, really appreciate and look up to, he advocates for this book as well. And he's advocated to the point that the demand for the book has skyrocketed. Well, of course, when a certain group of folks see that the folks that have been oppressed are getting informed and getting educated as to how the oppression is taking place, what they want to do is now they're going to increase the pricing of the book to the place where the majority of us would not be able to actually purchase it. And just to give you an example, on Amazon, out of curiosity, I actually bought this book for $15, Black Labor, White Wealth, a couple of months back. $15 then. The book sells for as much as $675 now on Amazon. Do you see how the game is played? And I noticed that happens with quite a few of our books in our community, as to which if there's some hardcore truth in there that will actually wake us up, somebody, prices those books out of reach to make sure that the majority of us don't get a hold of that information. So understand that this knowledge is powerful, but once we get this knowledge, it makes it even more powerful and impactful when we put it to work. But going back to this young lady and dealing with some of the issues that we're seeing today from an economic standpoint, this stuff just did not happen. And just so you know, I'm not just talking out the side of my neck and I'm just making stuff up. Let's talk about numbers. Let's talk about some hardcore numbers that you yourself, if you go Google these pieces of information that I'm going to get ready to give you right now, you can look it up for yourself. So let's just talk about some numbers. And one of the biggest headlines here as of recently that has stuck out to me like a sore thumb. Oh my goodness. New report says the typical single black woman with a college degree is $11,000 in debt. Let me read that again. New report says that the typical single black woman with a college degree is $11,000 in debt. And where that headline come from, because you can actually see the headline, I think it's called the URWeb, the URWeb, I think it's short for Electronic Urban Report, URWeb, EURweb.com. You'll see this on here, but they also have a link as far as the report is concerned, and it actually comes from the title of the study. And this is a recent study that was released in January of this year. Women, Race, and Wealth. That's where this headline is coming from. And one of the highlights out of this particular study, now I need for you to hear what I'm saying here. For every dollar of wealth owned by the typical white family, the median black family owns only 5 cents. Let me repeat that. For every dollar of wealth owned by the typical white family, the median black family owns only 5 cents. So we only have 5 cents to every dollar in a typical white family. Think about that. Now that comes from, and let me repeat it, it's the title of the report or the study is it's called Women, Race, and Wealth. It was released in January 2017, so you can Google that. It actually it comes from Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equity and Insight Center for Community Economic Development. Let's talk about some more numbers. And you may have heard about this particular study by the Institute of Policy Studies and Corporation for Economic Development. It would take 228 years for the average black family to amass the same level of wealth the average white family holds today. And it goes on to say that this gap will never close if America stays on its current economic path. Now, that was read directly from inequality.org. So you can go to that website, inequality.org, and read. There's a lot of good articles there that deal with some hardcore number facts as far as black wealth or the lack thereof as far as our people as a whole. We're not talking about black celebrities. We're not talking about wealthy NBA, NFL athletes. We're not talking about those folk. We're talking about you and I for the most part. All right. Let's talk about even more numbers here. And this comes from another study dealing with. It comes from demos.org. And the name of this study is The Asset Value of Whiteness, Understanding the Racial Wealth Gap. So, here are these numbers here. According to data from the Survey of Consumer Finances, the median white household possessed $13 in net wealth for every dollar held by the median black household in 2013. That same year, median white households possess $10 for each dollar held by the median Latino household. So in other words, even for the folks that is looked upon as far as a quote-unquote minority, what we may assume to be the lesser minority, actually is a few dollars better off than we are. And once you study how these policies came into place to make this happen, you will get the message real quick that it was designed for us to be the permanent underclass, even behind Latinos. Please go get the book Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson. And this is an individual who was involved in government for years. So this guy is not making up numbers right off the top of his head. This man knows exactly what he's talking about. He was there during, the creation of policies. And I'm telling you, what we're seeing today was designed. And unless we wake up real quick, this has nothing to do with trying to create businesses so we can become millionaires over and over again. Right now, it's all about changing our behavior just so we can survive. Because we literally have economic genocide going on right now. And we have to change our attitudes and our behaviors economically. We have to change our behaviors socially. And we also have to change our behaviors internally, spiritually as well. This is seriously a time as to which we need to look in the mirror, because we cannot ignore the devices that have been set up for us to fail basically from day one. I mean, you think about the first number, the first headline that I had actually mentioned. The typical single black woman with a college degree is $11,000 in debt. Think about that. So in other words, the ink is not even dry on the degree, and she's already $11,000 in debt. But let's go even further, because the study is quite eye-opening. The single black woman in their 20s without a degree have zero wealth. Let me read that again. Single black women in their 20s without a degree have zero wealth. Now, when you first say that, that sounds bad. And it is. But then let's go a little bit further, and it says the typical single black woman with a college degree is $11,000 in debt. I know quite a few single black women myself, in which that debt load is significantly higher than $11,000. It goes on to say that married black women in their 30s and with college degrees are $20,000 in debt. So in other words, basically the debt doubled once they got married. Because guess what? If you happen to marry a man who went through the same thing that you did as a single black woman, and he's got debt and you got debt, you bring that debt together, it's a hole that you start out in, and it takes forever to get out of, if you even get out of it. So in theory, and just by numbers, the single black woman without a degree in her 20s is better off than the woman with a degree, with the debt. Think about that. So this is not a referendum on whether or not to get an education. This is a referendum on how we go about it. Because we have to change. Something is wrong. Everybody else may be going through something similar. And as they say, if white America has a cold, that means that black folks got the flu. So therefore, we have got to do something different, because their remedy is not our remedy. Let me give you a little bit of insight on how systematic and systemic racism, white supremacy is. Something that I learned years ago, and I was nowhere near aware as I am now. I started out in the insurance industry over 20 years ago. When I first got my license, I was in Virginia. And me not knowing any better, I actually went and worked for an insurance company that at the time was still offering debit insurance. What is debit insurance? Debit insurance at that particular time, and I just give you the layman's terms, was basically burial policies that offered a weekly premium. The problem with that is that those weekly premiums were much higher than somebody who had a monthly, quarterly, or even if they paid their insurance, annually. Those premiums were pretty high. I didn't know at that particular time when I first started off. So after about a month or two in the game, I'm looking at the books and I'm saying, well, wait a minute, hold up. Instead of offering my people these weekly policies, I'm going to start offering them a monthly policy. Because here's the deal. With those weekly policies, there was just enough to be able to put somebody in the ground and maybe pay a bill or two. I had white clients. Not any of my white clients had a weekly premium. It was either monthly, bi-monthly, or they paid by the quarter or even annually. And here was the other glaring difference in between those clients and my people. And I had a few of my black clients that had the monthly policies, but the vast majority were weekly. But here was the glaring difference, and I'm going to end it on here, and we can build from this particular point. But I just want to make you aware that it is real out here. The white clients, the majority of those folk were not employees. The vast majority of those clients were business owners. And so I would have conversations with them, just trying to get an understanding of why I would see the difference in the client's lifestyle as far as just everyday living. And so I would talk to those white clients, and those white clients would tell me this. Because I would ask them, well, how did your business get started? How did you get the funding? How did you have the capital to to do this? And they said, well, for the most part, it was quite simple. It was either their parents, mother or father, or grandparents, or a close aunt or uncle, that when they passed away, they had large insurance policies to be able to leave the type of inheritance so these younger children, the younger generations, will be able to have or even start a business. So they would rattle off to me as if it was just a common everyday thing that, my grandfather left me $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, and that's how I started my business. That same conversation that I would have similarly with my own people, and it was a struggle trying to get them to transfer and make the switch from making that weekly payment, which was significantly higher than making a monthly payment. But because that's how they were trained, and that was the only insurance policy for the longest time, for years, that was offered to black folk, because it was standard company policy to only offer weekly debit to black folk. When I did some research and understood that, I said, oh, no, we're not doing this anymore. Now, I think nationwide now, there's no companies that are selling debit insurance policies. I think it's actually against the law. But back then, I think it was in the last day, it was breathing this last breath. And once I caught hold and understood what was going on, I could no longer participate in that madness. So it was either monthly or any other payment method, but I was not doing weekly anymore. But it was hard to get them to make the switch, because they were accustomed and trained, and then only thinking that this was the only type of policy that they could have, and they couldn't understand and they couldn't grasp the purpose of leaving, larger amounts as far as inheritance is concerned through insurance. Because a lot of them had an attitude, hey, look, just enough to put me in the ground, and that is it. Well, it's 2017 now, and you will be surprised the amount of conversations that I have with some of us, a lot of us, who really don't even think that life insurance, just basic life insurance, is important enough to have. And these are individuals that have children, by the way. So here it is, we have the opportunity to at least make a difference from an inheritance generational standpoint, to leave behind something so they have an opportunity to have their own businesses. Or it's an opportunity to leave behind even more debt. And therefore the circle and the cycle of debt continues, along with poor financial literacy and the inability or the lack of concern to understand just basics of how, if we do not change our behavior just in that area alone, we are shooting our own selves in the foot. They already done put us behind. Why participate to put us even further behind? So as you can see, this is real. This is happening. And the rabbit hole only gets deeper. But we do have an opportunity to make a difference. And I'm not talking about becoming millionaires overnight. Like I said, this is just a matter of survival at this particular point. Are we going to leave, the generations behind us in even more debt? Because see, the way that it's turning out, I believe that student loan debt has outpaced credit card debt in this country. Let me repeat that. Student loan debt has outpaced credit card debt. So you can see where the next bubble is going to come from. That bubble is going to burst. And who is it going to impact the most? Just like everything else that happens in this country. When the last recession hit, who did it impact the most? you're correct. It was us. So I want us to start thinking differently. Not thinking about just about today, but thinking about a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What can I do today that can prepare me and the generations behind me to be able to deal with the madness called the system? Because if we don't make the changes now, we're not going to make it. We're going to constantly be in this cycle of almost like basically like a dog chasing his own tail. And I don't know about you, but I'm already tired of it. And this is just one aspect. So, until the next podcast, be blessed. And please pass this podcast along so we can start having these particular conversations even more. I do plan on going live. It's just not now. I'm just starting out podcasting, so bear with me. This is a learning progress, and I'm enjoying it, but it's going to take a little bit of time because I do want to set up the live feed on Facebook and also doing Periscope at the same time. That's what the other professionals out here do. I'm not there yet, so I understand my role at this particular point. So, hey, look, enjoy the remaining of your Saturday. Be blessed. Be safe out here. And let's start thinking differently. And once again, I strongly encourage getting that book, Black Labor, White Wealth by Claude Anderson. I believe you can go to Powernomics.com. That's his website directly. And you can get the book from there. And no, they're not selling it at $675 a piece. You can best believe that. All right, until next time, just hold it down. Be encouraged and just know that we're going to make it through this. It's a process. It's not going to change overnight. But if we are willing to stay in this fight, we'll win this war. All right, be blessed.